This is the audience for my persuasive speech. I'd like to share a story with you that I got from goodlearner.com. The story starts out with the fact that there was a gentleman. He went through 8 elementary schools and over 3 different high schools. Then he was pushed out to graduate. But the part of that is the fact that this particular person didn't know how to read. He couldn't retain the information. And when he was able to skim through the information, he didn't remember anything that he said. That isn't the worst part of it. The worst part of it is not only that the kids in school called him dumb, stupid, and even worse than that, his own father made fun of him. The only support that he had with his learning disability was the fact that his mother encouraged him. And he went on, this particular person went on to become a famous blockbuster movie star. This person is none other than Tom Cruise. Tom Cruise suffers from what is called dyslexia. But dyslexia isn't the only type of learning disability. The fact of the matter is many people suffer from different learning disabilities. According to the Learning Disability Association of America, over 15% of the general population suffers from learning disability. That means 1 in every 7 Americans have a learning disability. And the sad part of all of this is over 50% go undiagnosed. I, like Tom Cruise, suffer from a learning disability. At age 43, I've decided to get it diagnosed and to put a plan together to help minimize the effects of it. But also, the reality sets in from learning disabilities and from the research. The fact of the matter is, going through life with an undiagnosed learning disability can be very frustrating, very demoralizing, affect your self-confidence, and worst off, it interferes with your ability to reach your maximum God-given potential. Say, what does this all have to do, and why is this such a bad thing? Well, I'd like to share 3 pieces of information with you about learning disabilities. Number 1 is learning disabilities are a silent killer. Number 2, that people with learning disabilities are not unintelligent. And number 3, early detection for children and adults will help people reach their maximum God-given potential. Let's look at the first one, the fact that people with learning disabilities, it is a silent killer. Why is it a silent killer? Simply because people with learning disabilities, a lot of them are ashamed to be labeled learning disability because people will think that they're dumb or stupid. Or they're so frustrated that they don't know that there's help. But learning disability author Gene Gorman put it this way: people with learning disabilities live with anxiety, depression, low self-esteem, self-control issues, mental abuse, verbal abuse, and worst of all, some will even come to the point of taking their own life with suicide. But this doesn't have to so, because people like this are not dumb. Which brings us to the second point. Individuals with learning disabilities are not unintelligent. The National Institute of Child Health and Human Development, or the NICHD, tells us this, that people with learning disabilities and their IQ and their intelligence levels do not go together. The fact of the matter is, through their research, they've found out that people with learning disabilities have average to above average IQs. We see this every single day from people like Leonardo da Vinci, to Tom Cruise, to Whoopi Goldberg, and to someone you'll recognize as a political icon of World War II. His name is Sir Winston Churchill. Sir Winston Churchill, if you'll bear with me for a minute, allow me to read a quote from him. This quote was about learning disability. I was, on the whole, considerably discouraged by my school days. It was not pleasant to feel oneself so completely outclassed and left behind at the beginning of the race. In that quote, you can see his emotional distress from his early age of learning disabilities. But we must take the time and the effort as adults and as parents with children, which brings us to point number 3, to early detect, as early as we can, learning disabilities. This is simply because of the fact that the earlier detection allows to reduce the emotional effects, and also causes us to be easier to reach our maximum God-given potential. But we must do this through identifying the different learning disabilities and what constitutes them. I'm going to give you the 3 Ds from the NICHD organization. And the first D is dyslexia. And most people associate that with the flipping of words and letters around, but that is also a very small portion of it. It has actually entailed anything from reading, retention, comprehension, and spelling troubles where the brain does not compute or decode them properly. Secondly is what is called dyscalculia. And dyscalculia is basically the inability for a person to adequately retain the concepts of math, early math problems, and solve them. The third one was what is called dysgraphia. And dysgraphia is basically the inability to form letters properly and keep them within a confined area. Dr. Stanley Greensfeld said this by emphasizing the early intervention and the earliest detection of learning disabilities will allow you to reach your maximum intellectual potential. I say it this way. The earlier intervention and earlier detection will help you to reach your maximum God-given potential. So where does this all begin? Well, the first part of this begins with finding a learning disability specialist. This can be done for your children through the school disability department. It can be done through searching through the internet, which is where I started. And it can also be done through calling a local psychiatrist or mental health place and asking them. But after that, you need to do a few other things. You have the specialist do a proper testing, put a plan together to help you minimize your learning disability, put that plan into order, and don't give up and keep at it. Today, if you have a learning disability or suspect that you do or your child does, I implore you to minimize the physical, psychological, and emotional side effects of learning disability. As a struggling adult, I double implore you to get tested. If your children are struggling with it, I implore you to get your children tested. As Christians, one of our responsibilities is to reach our maximum God-given potential. We can do this with learning disabilities by getting tested, because it will help us to better read, comprehend, and reach that level. So today, if you're suffering from that or have other things, I implore you today, get tested.